are going to be giving a kind of a version of what we did at CEA. But also, when we saw how many people seemed to be interested in this, we thought, hello, and they come in. When we saw how many people were interested in the topic, we thought we'd like to do it a little more interactive than we were able to do at CEA. At the conference, we had a kind of a 12-minute window, squished window of time with like 3 minutes for questions. So I'm going to actually start off by asking you a question first, and that is, why are you interested in this topic? And Matt's going to kind of take some notes, and then we can kind of throw in addressing some of your questions. We want to make sure that this is a conversation starter. This is really what we wanted it for. So, yay! People put their hands up. Steve at the back.
Well, I just put my hand up just in case someone else didn't.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Well, no, it's always a challenge to try and evaluate teams, individuals within teams. Because on the one hand, we try and make them work as a team and everybody gets the same, but at the same time we want to try and accommodate things.
Yeah.
So I just want to see how other people handle
How
that.
others are at least sticking their necks out to try
Yes.
to try and handle it. Yes. Okay, awesome, George.
Exactly what he said.
Exactly. How many are kind of in that camp? It's like, okay, so somebody stuck their neck out to do this. What does that look like? And that was basically the interest we had at CEA as well, was people coming up afterwards saying, I wanted to do this, I wanted to see somebody do it. We're not saying this is necessarily the right way to do it or the best way, but we felt we really needed to start something, and I'm going to get into what that's for. So really what I'm hoping to accomplish through the talk today is talk about what message have we seen with our own students about Capstone Design Projects. Maybe you're seeing the same thing, and it doesn't matter if it's a Capstone project, it could be any team project. What methods do your faculty have about, or what myths do your faculty have? So students have myths, they have ideas and assumptions on how things are going to work, and faculty also have ideas and assumptions about how things are going to work. And what is your biggest concern or fear of pushback around failing individual students on capstones? Because we're often finding people saying, I know there's an issue, I'm just not quite sure that I think it's going to be even more painful to fail a student than to just let them kind of go through. Key thing that we kind of tripped over and are pulling out of, and I know, Ida, you had shared some data with Matt around the team stuff that you were doing. So the whole idea of social loafing, that's really been kind of my primary bugaboo. I really don't like to see social loafing, but we actually learned some really interesting things, and we've got a paradigm that we're trying to set up to look at it, or that we're hoping we'll further look at it. Do you know of some students that have contributed incompetent work to team projects? And how do you hold students accountable for their contributions on teams? So we're going to show you kind of how we've been addressing that. And so my start-off question is to ask you, have any of you failed individual students in a capstone project? No. So, sorry, no. It's good to put your hand up. Yeah. And my only, jump right in. My only clarification is that it can't have been a student who was working on their own. It had to have actually been an individual student on a project. Has anybody done that? Has anybody done that? Awesome. So we will get you to jump in at some point as well, or you may, when we get to the questions, and to also share how you've done that. So myths on the student side. When I took over the job as associate chair, I had even more alumni decide that they wanted to tell me all the ways that we could improve the program. And the more interesting ones, and I've had one that came back fairly recently too, is alumni that are coming back that are actually now have some regrets over their capstone project because they feel that they bought into the myth. So they bought into the myth that nobody's going to fail, you're in 4th year. So they figured, hey, I don't really have to do much. Other people will pick that up. More recent myths that we're seeing among our younger students is that design capstone is about pitching. It's not necessarily about engineering. And so we were finding that a little bit disconcerting because we were seeing the technical, what we considered to be the technical analysis and technical input into our projects, looking like they were going on a very bad slippery slope. We've also heard students say the overall solution concept is more important than the engineering execution because it's only a prototype. Oh, I don't have to worry about it. It's just a prototype. So we were finding that their testing and validation parts were getting weaker and weaker and weaker. And the bigger thing that we were hearing, and this is where the alumni were coming back and sharing their thoughts, is I've got other priorities, but I'm okay because if my team passes, I'll pass. And so the regrets that we were seeing from alumni were things saying, you know, they're looking back now. I had one dad who was in my office a few months ago, bringing his high school level son around for a visit. And we were chatting about things, and he was asking about Capstone and what we were doing. And I said, well, actually, we made some changes. And I was telling him about that. And he said, oh, that's great. And then his son went to use the washroom, and he said to me, I am so embarrassed about what I produced as a capstone project. I would not want my son to see it, and I'm so glad that the department didn't keep it. So we are hearing that, you know, there's also this kind of things, people recognizing that they would like to be held accountable, but how do we do that? So on the other side, we have the myths that we hear from faculty members. They don't want to be the bad guy. It looks bad if the team fails. I've had younger faculty members say like they're really worried if the team is failing. Sometimes they feel like they've got to be that 5th or 6th member of the team because if the team's not passing, they feel it's a bad reflection on them as an instructor or as an advisor, and we're trying to say, oh. Other things, hey, they were fine when they were in my office. I have no idea why it wasn't holding together. The students said they were working on it. So we've also known that many of the programs are now starting to put in loops where you've got more milestone checks, like, okay, show me what you've done. And the more common thing is I'm hearing people say, you know, I'm pretty sure that so-and-so on the team should fail. I just don't really know how to do it. I don't know how to do it when there's only the one person. So we've done this. So on our previous assessment process, this is what we had been doing, and we made some changes in fall 2014, and that's what I'll talk about. But before that, like most programs, we have a two-term capstone project. Separate grades for 461 and 462. So in theory, a student could fail the fall term, and in theory, although we never saw that happen. And in that case, almost without exception, all team members got the same grades. And I actually have some data from our system's courses by going into Quest back to 1987. So I'm going to talk about that in a minute so we can show you some data. But typically what happened was in the fall term there was a proposal, some sort of concept demo might be done, and there would be an interim report, and the grades came from the supervisor and whoever was serving as the course coordinator. Winter term, major deliverables were some sort of plan update, okay, what are you doing? Some sort of public symposium, some sort of final report. Some of our course coordinators in the past would include a team logbook, some didn't, some reviewed it, some didn't. So that was kind of a big variable in our course at that time. And again, the grades came down to the course coordinator and the supervisor. So how many have models that looks more or less like that? You know, give and take, more or less, two-term, separately. So in theory, could fail. So what we wanted to do after talking with alumni, talking with recent alumni, seeing things, hearing things, is we really wanted to come up with a way to have fair differential grading among the team members and to encourage the students to make meaningful and competent technical contributions to capstone projects. So we did something a little bit radical, and we said, managing your team, like scheduling the meetings and driving your buddies to wherever it is to pick up parts, is not a meaningful technical contribution to the team. Scheduling, project management, everybody should be playing a role in that. Writing technical reports is an important piece in the process, but it is not going to, you can't just be the technical writer. So we said that doesn't fly. We wanted something where we could really start to put some more emphasis on their actual technical contributions. That didn't mean that the other pieces, like I said, weren't there. It's just that we wanted every individual student to be able to demonstrate that they were doing something meaningful. So it turns out that no fails myth on the student side wasn't really so much of a myth. So like I said, in my capacity as associate chair, I have access to Quest grades that go back as far as Quest wants to post them. So I looked at the graduating years. The cohorts were running about 70 to 80 students. From 1997 to 2014, we had 0 grades assigned to students in the 50 to 60 range. And for students that received what would have been a failing grade, there was no failing grade in 461 the first half. There were some failing grades in the second half course, but they were not technically numeric grades. They were listed as a WF, so a late withdrawal failure or a failure to complete. Checking in, these look like students that had, I don't know, maybe they had a good co-op job or got an early job offer, but they basically abandoned their degrees too. So that it was a case that they left the system. So the reason I've included 2014, fall 2014 was when we made the change, and we decided we were going to require what we called accountability logs from all of our students. And I will be explaining those in a little more depth. Basically, we wanted each individual student to account for what they were doing on the project. And they had to provide us with some evidence. That evidence could be hand calculations, it could be sketches, it could be images. At minimum, they had to write up a summary each week, a very brief summary that said what they were doing, what they learned, and what they planned to do next week. So it didn't have to be onerous, but we needed something to start the process. And what the agreement we had with the 2014 class, so the cohort that graduated in 2015, is that while we would try this, no one would fail because of this. So they could get low grades, but we wouldn't fail them because of the accountability log. We needed to have a safer transition because we really needed people to try and be honest with the approach we were taking. So in 2015, which was then the next iteration, that was the graduating cohort in 2015. Nobody failed, so we had no failures, but we did have 5 students that wound up with accountability logs that had grades less than 60. They still had a heavy team component, so most of them bumped over the 60 mark, but we had some that were clearly sitting, and this was our indicator that, okay, if we'd gone just full tilt, we would have had at least 5 students fail. In 2016, we now made it very clear to students that they could fail, and we wound up with 6 students who had course grades between 50 and 60, and we had 2 students that actually failed, and I will be spending some time talking about what we did in that case, because we had to come up with a recovery for them. And what happens when you have a student who fails the second half of a design course, and it's supposed to be a team stuff, so we had to creatively come up with let's call it a supplemental exam of sorts for those students, and we'll talk about that. And now we're in with the 2017 cohort, so this is the one that Matt's been managing for us, because I've been the course coordinator for the 2015 cohort with Stacy Scott, and then Stacy took it over for 2016, and Matt's taken it over, and I've played an advisory role in that. So in this most recent cohort, we had 1 student with us for between 50 to 60, and that was actually because of the 2-week recovery. And we have 2 students that are currently working towards, we meet with them next week, right? Yes, 2 that are on their supplemental. So these are students that didn't, these 2 and the ones before did not graduate with their cohort. They had to delay everything. So to be accountable, what does that mean? And we've defined it to mean if you're accountable, you're able to rationally assess your own work by reviewing quality and progress against relevant standards, reflect on personal growth through the experience, and identify knowledge, skills, and tools for further action. So we figured, like, if you want somebody to be accountable, that's what they have to be able to do. And we found that this aligned actually with the CAB graduate attributes all around lifelong learning, which was somewhat convenient for us as well. So we wound up having to create some sort of students love rubrics. They love something that they can check against, and faculty members need something that they can use as an evaluation piece as well. And so we came up with a very basic rubric that wound up having 5 levels. I've only shown 1, 3, and 5 on this, but I'm happy to share our documents with people. And there were three main components. They had to describe or illustrate their contributions. So that was first and foremost what we were looking at. You know, what did you do? They had to comment on their personal learning. So what did you learn from this technical thing? And at the first stages, we were happy if they would tell us, I learned that I'm not so good at this. Or I learned this is going to take way more time than I thought it would. And then to identify on how they were going to do personal management. So not necessarily, they still need to keep the team on track, but how were they personally going to contribute to keeping the team on track? Not, oh, well, I'll be at the next team meeting. What are you going to be doing? Here's what you said you've done. What's your next steps? So really trying to force it down at the technical level. And the levels that we use that made sense to students, so I'm going to try and explain this, is to say level 5 is you're working like we would expect a professional to work. Level 3 was you were working at around a 3rd year level. Level 1 is you're really, this isn't even university work. And in that first round of cohorts, that's what we saw. I have one in my office. It's a little, it's a student's logbook. I don't know how he thought he was going to keep everything in this teeny tiny little book. And there are maybe, for an entire 8 months, 6 pages of scribbly stuff. And he thought that was good enough as an academic submission. He happened to be in the cohort that we said we wouldn't fail, but at least we knew that that was as low a bar as left to their own devices. That's what that student thought was being competent. And this was someone who was going to be graduating. So we thought, oops, we've tripped over something here. What we found as well is it helped if we said, you know, if the top level, if you get here, we would give you a good letter of reference for grad school, or we would give you a good letter of reference for employment. That meant something to them. That was something they could kind of wrap their heads around. So that was helpful. Ton of work though, well, right? Ton of work to try, because we used that rubric for each of these 3. So it wasn't, Matt's now doing something a little more holistically, but the first pass through, and I was doing all of the grading of the accountability logs, was to use that 5-point rubric on each of those, on thousands of pages. But what did it look like? We left it up, especially with the first cohort. Well, what do you want to give us? How do you think this should be? And some of the students came up with electronic, they could do it in hard copy, or they could create an electronic template. We allowed them to upload it to Learn, and in fact now the majority of students do upload it to Learn, which makes it a lot easier for us. So one student came up with a template that very much looked like an engineering logbook. That made sense to him, and he said he had the template, it actually was pretty easy. Our top students said having something organized, this is another one that's from our top student, one of our top students who used Evernote, and just kept everything together, could easily drag and drop. And it was our top students who had been dreading it the most because they said, there's going to be too much detail, it's going to take too much time. That found that actually when they went to write their reports or when they went to reflect back on it, they were glad that they'd actually had that much organization for themselves. But also we've been hearing from some AMET that are saying they're using it as part of a design portfolio. So if they want to be able, they want to design career path, and they want something to be able to show. Now they've got things because their evidence is right there as well, and they can say, here's what I did, this is what I submitted. So for the the top students, they were seeing value in it when we were afraid they were just going to give us a lot of pushback because of time. So to pass or fail, we had to weigh the evidence, and so this is what we wound up doing is moving away from, this was our, I know I've got another slide. Let me just check something while my brain has a little bit of a senior moment. Okay, I will go with this because I think I dropped a slide. Anyways, so what we've got is how we were actually calculating the inputs from the information that we get. We have information from the student, individual student, and we have others' input. And in our very first, so prior to 2014, all the input for grading would have come largely from the supervisor and course coordinator. We've now put in a panel exam. How many have put in panel exams? I know a few of the departments. I thought...
Well, we call it final design review.
Design reviews, but they're done as a panel, right?
I'm not sure what you mean by panel.
Okay, this is a good. So we're using, systems used to do this way back when I was kind of digging through things, and Peter Rowley told me this. So it's like a mini defense. So they do a 20-minute presentation as a team, and then there is a 20 to 25-minute now.
So in the first course, it's about 5 to 10 minutes per student, and then the second course with more time, so as much time as student. So overall, the second panel exam could be an hour long for a team.
Yeah, so the team presents. The panel is made up of the course coordinator, the supervisor, at least one of our members of our engineering staff. So there's a technical person on, and there could also then be another subject matter expert if needed, but a minimum of 3. We try to stay as consistent as we can, so the course coordinator is playing that role across the panels. When we've had when we did it the first year, I did half the teams and Stacy did half the teams, but we stayed consistent and we were doing double checks and cross checks. The students present, and then the questions, as Matt says, we ask team questions, we ask individual questions. The teams submit what's called a, I thought I had it up there. Instead of a long technical report, the team uses a template that we give them to produce what's essentially a conference-length paper. And then that's submitted. There is a chart at the back that says, here's what each of the individuals were responsible for. The panel gets it in advance, and the panel's supposed to have read it before the defense. So much like you would do for a master's or a PhD, which means then if George says he's done the software architecture, we're going to ask him questions about it. Especially if we were a little bit dubious as to what George did because his accountability logs were a little bit thin, we might do that. We've also got to the point on one of the supplementals where if we're doubting that the source code is original, we might have them actually bring it in, put it up. Okay, George, explain those lines to us. So it is more of a defense style. And most of the students, at least the kind of feedback we're getting is mixed to positive, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So like the big thing is why I extended that panel exam for the 462 course last term. And I got a little bit of pushback from supervisors like, oh, that's a long time. It seems like, but after we actually went through the panel process, they're like, oh, it was fantastic. We actually got to ask real questions. We could test individual students and see if they actually did things that were real and understood the topic. So I think that overall that's been really positive. And I think the students too feel like they get a chance to actually show the work they've done and that they've learned things. So the students that are confident and actually did the work, they're proud to or happy to like show that they actually learned something and understand the topic that way.
And they're actually looking for tough questions. Like they expect us to ask.
I did get emails saying, you didn't ask me the right questions.
Yeah.
You should ask us more hard questions about the stats.
So we've had a couple of iterations about this now, so it is filtering down and students are starting to kind of prepare for this and expect it. The students that aren't prepared, you can tell within 5 seconds. It's like, it would be like going into a master's or PhD defense, and you know that they don't know, and they know. But I'll go on with this. So I can talk about this at some point. But the other thing we really thought, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit more about the dynamic of when the accountability logs are reviewed? Like, was this something they got checked on, repeatedly, or?
So what we did for the first iteration was they submitted an interim log. At any time you could come up and ask me, hey, Professor Murray, could you have a look at this? I want to make sure I'm on the right track. And again, a number of our better students were doing that. I'd actually had a chance to try something like this in my technical elective the term before, and at least a couple of those students were in that Capstone cohort, so they kind of already had a few people that kind of had an idea of what we might be trying to do with this. So we did an interim check, and if they were in a Jenny 403, 404, they had to do it as well. So they had to submit that to me. I think I had to give you grades tonight. Yeah, because Steve had our Jenny, because we didn't want to set up a situation where students were then looking for what would be an easy out. We wanted to at least keep certain things consistent. So the Jenny 403, 404 had to do it as well. So I did all the interim grading, and I used a shorter rubric just to be able to let them know what level they were at. Like, are you working at a first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year level? Basically thumbs up. If I'd had stamps, I would have just done that. I didn't think. But I reviewed a lot, and students were really good in that many of them did actually pick up what they were doing. They could start to see some value, and so they picked that up. So then I graded everything at Christmas time as well. And then going into the second phase of it, Stacy went on sabbatical. Gordon Savage stepped in, so I had to now train up another very old school colleague, and he used the rubrics, I used the rubrics, he was using the rubrics that I was doing, and we were comparing notes, and he was giving the grades I would have given. So we were able to then show the students, it didn't matter which coordinator it was, that the grades were coming in with like 1% to 2% for the general group. So the students were fine, as long as you can keep things so they feel like it's transparent and you're trying to be fair, they were good with that. Yeah, Mike?
So you were grading it once midterm and then once final?
Yeah.
And you as a coordinator were doing all the grading?
I was originally, yeah.
And who's doing the grading now?
So that's falling...
So I moved it to my TA to help me with that. So I do have a TA for my Capstone course.
Okay.
And so the TA is looking at the accountability logs at the midterm, but then I'm also doing spot checks. Like if there's anyone in the low categories, I review them, all the low ones, and if the ones are decent, he feels they're fine.
Because, yeah, the accountability logs themselves are, let's call them more red flags. So they're worth about, in total about, I think 15%, because there's a postmortem that they have to do with as well. So they have to write up kind of a reflection on the entire project. But what we were finding is we were using them more to try and flag students, teams that were really falling behind, but were telling us that they were on track, or telling their supervisors that they were on track, or big disparity within a team. So 3 of the team members doing things and 1 not doing anything.
Okay. So how many projects do you have?
So we have about 16
teams.
And we have about 70 to 80
70 to 80 students.
About 78 students, 16 projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the resources that you're allocating are 1 faculty member as a teaching task and a TA.
Yeah, at that time, yeah.
At that time. What are you doing now?
So this is where Matt is, as we're coming, so the TA is doing a pass. We're trying to make our rubrics now a little more comprehensive, so it's not having to do a little more holistic. So we're not having to do quite the breakdown that I was doing originally. I was doing it a lot originally because I was trying to figure out what was happening. If you had a cohort of 150, there's no way a single individual could do it. Not using that approach. Yeah, does that help answer what you were?
Yeah, I just, because I marked the status reports That I do, and I review the bottom end of we do a peer review at the end. But, you know, marking the 2 status reports, I find it's an onerous task as
Yeah.
a coordinator second term. I have 40 projects,
Yeah.
no TA.
Yeah.
And the reason, and using a TA I found to be completely unproductive, because the TA just doesn't understand that, no matter how good the TA you get, just doesn't understand the design process, hasn't seen enough projects. doesn't-
So I was lucky that I did get a good TA, so we actually had like a postdoc student that we assigned that TA position.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
he had a lot of experience with the program, he had TA'd our design courses, even like the first year courses and other things, so I was lucky to have a good TA, so you're absolutely right, if you have a bad TA for that course,
It's more work.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, we were really trying to figure out how we could do something. The students trusted that it was the same person doing it and doing it more or less consistently. As we were trying to bring this up, it's kind of like work reports. Eventually, you've got to kind of be able to train more people to be able to do it. But how you do it is,
So overall, you have 16 projects that bridge 2 terms,
yep,
and you have a coordinator the first term and a TA the first term, and a coordinator
Yeah.
the second term.
Yeah, we do, yeah.
And a TA the second term.
yes. When Stacy and I did it, we had no TA.
Yeah, because I also see that your panel reviews, we do presentations at the end, and I've tried to create what I call panels, and I try to put at least 3 or 4 faculty members into those panels who are reviewing them. But it's a 20-minute presentation, then like 5 or 10 minutes of questions at the end. So it's not that in-depth, but 1 hour per, if the coordinator is at all of them, that's over 40 hours.
Yep. Yep. We're not saying this is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
We're saying as we're trying to learn, we needed to be sinking in resources to try and figure this out so that we can figure out what we can now short circuit.
like I think we've done the shorter version, and like it's a big challenge. Like I imagine you might like more time to evaluate,
For sure.
particularly weak teams. But obviously that resource is a big thing. So it is a big task for Ben. I'm glad it's a teaching task.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Please, Steve.
In mechanical, essentially, we do 3 design reviews a term, and it's the coordinator and the advisor, and the last one, we invite an external in. So it's sort of
Yeah.
like an exam.
Yeah.
We have 2 streams and 2 coordinators, one for the 8 stream, one for the 4 stream. And no TA assistants.
Yeah.
And each stream is how many projects on this stream?
Typically 20 to 30.
Yeah. Because you guys are, you're higher than we are.
Does somebody else want to comment on the resource allocation?
Yeah.
The length of the panel exam, as a panel member, I'd say it could be shorter because there was some dead time. So I think 40 minutes would be pretty good. 20 minutes, 20 minutes.
And I think for good teams, you're right, but then for
Yeah.
bad teams, then it
Yeah.
needs to extend. But I definitely think that for the good teams, we should shorten it down.
Yeah, well, we wound up, so 40 minutes was what we started off originally, and we would do 2 panels, so an interim, like a warm-up, we'd do something like a practice with them, and then we'd do one at the end of each term. But like Matt says, it's trying to give the opportunity for, how do I say this politically correct? I'm going to try, so please bear with me. To give the weaker teams enough time to try and save themselves before they hang themselves. Because we're trying to figure out, are they nervous? Do they know they just, need a little bit of a warm up? Will it kind of click? Some of them have horrible memories. And doing panel exams is not necessarily something that a lot of undergrads do. So, we try to, like Matt says, but to be fair to everyone and say, oh, your team's only going to need 20 minutes, and Verna, we'll be seeing you for 90.
I was the social one.
That's the group in the back, right? But like, so at least trying to learn this, we're trying to figure out, we do appreciate it, we're trying to figure out, like, how do we do this? Okay, so one of the things I did want to, if nothing else, even at the conference I said, I wanted to put this, I came across this term in doing a lit review, and I loved it so much I had to find a way to work it into my own paper. And so it's this, I believe the guy's name is Jeff Pilchi, who had presented at the same conference in 2013, uses this word called entitlementality. So that was what we would really thought we were going to be running into, is we really thought we were going to get a lot of the undergrads pushing back on us, saying basically, I don't have to do this, you know, I paid my tuition and all those kinds of things. But that actually wasn't what we got a minor bit of that, but most of the students became a little more concerned about having to log too much, like they couldn't figure out what would be the cutoffs. You've had those comments, right? And students, but there were very few that were performing poorly that were saying, well, no, I should be passing, just give me a pass. Most of them were trying to own up.
If I may, I've taught quite a number of first and second year courses, and the students who have the mentality of I've paid my tuition and I've served my time sitting in the classrooms don't tend to make it to fourth year.
Yeah, thank you, yes, for just reinforcing that.
Not in all programs.
Pardon?
Not in all programs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we have the odd one, but yeah, some of them don't make it too far. Anyways, so we did wind up with, as I said, in 2016 we had 2 students that failed. Stacy kind of came to my office with this look, and she's after the panel exams, and she said, okay, now we have to do this. And so we had to figure out what we were going to do. And just so that we've got an idea of, this is a little more about how we do it now, is as Matt says, we're using the accountability logs as a bit of a red flag. Are you in that category where really we should be meeting with you one-on-one as well, not just with your team, to try and figure out what's happening and get you back on track? Before the term grade is posted, we started something new this year. So we had 3 students who, what shall we call them? One that was a clear fail, and then we had 2 that we would call close fails. You know, they were in that 45-ish, maybe could bump themselves over. And so it was actually Matt's idea to do a 2-week recovery. So they had to take the one technical component that they were working on for their project and actually demonstrate it at a competent level. And so they then had to submit a short technical report, and then we did a 3-person panel exam, and it was Matt and myself and the technical staff member who was familiar with the project. For that one, we didn't involve the supervisor because we wanted, had nothing to do with the supervisor. I'm not sure if even the supervisor was available at that time. But we wanted to keep it a small, less intimidating panel, give the student an opportunity. And they had to bring whatever it was that they had to fix on their project and actually demonstrate it. And we had the awkward situation of one of them passing and one of them not. And one of them actually revealing, oh my goodness. I will speak to the Dunning-Kruger effect in just a moment. So the longer one, so if they can't get through that part, there's now a 12-week recovery. So then they're doing like a 4C term, and they have to do a proposal for independent work, still related to the project or project topic. And they have to do the technical component, again, short technical report, and again, a 3-person panel exam, but they've got now a longer period of time to do it. And so we have 2 that are set up to do their panel exams next week. On the positive side, sorry, I knew that Julie was going to be taping, and I do have permission to actually have these pictures of these individuals, but I didn't know where the taping was going to go, so I blocked them out. But on the positive side, from 2000 and our 2016 cohort, I had to meet with the students to tell them they failed. Like, so Stacy assigned the grade in 2016, but I was the one that met with them and said, okay, here's what's happened. I have to lay out the bad news, and now I have to tell you what's going to be the recovery, because as the associate chair, then I kind of owned the recovery process. And I promised both students that if they could get through this and they showed up at convocation, I would be there to shake their hand. And so I was. And both students and their families were very appreciative of not just having the chance to recover, but actually appreciative that we were trying to hold everybody accountable. Because they knew if they were being held accountable, we were applying the same standards to others, and they valued that. So holding standards, and the students do appreciate it. So, do we still have? Yeah. Okay. So here's the piece that we tripped over, which might interest Ada and Simone, and that is in the process of trying to figure out why people failed. It was trying to figure out, well, what was happening within the team in the first place. And we tripped over a couple of things. So the first thing that you think of is, oh, it's just common social loafing, right? I've got to pick on someone else other than just George. Dave doesn't want to do this stuff. And he and Ehab are roommates, and Ehab's willing to just keep covering for Dave, hoping that Dave will eventually get his act together and do his piece, but it's okay, you know, right? Dave's accountability log looks kind of sketchy, but Dave tells us, oh, I've done all this stuff, it's just, I just can't seem to find time to write it down, right? So that's what we would think is happening. But then when we interviewed, and when I interviewed as associate chair, the two that failed in the first cohort, something really started to stand out. And that is, especially in the one student was probably the most extreme version I've seen in a long time of what I would call forced or group imposed social loafing. So this is for someone who's a weak academic student. It doesn't mean that they're the weakest student. They might actually be able to do fine in some of their technical electives, but their ability to take initiative, their ability to do self-planning, their ability to actually reflect on what they learn is so weak that the team members start blocking them from doing things, right? Oh, Dave, we'll have you do the technical writing. Or, gee, could you drive so-and-so to wherever we're going to get those parts? Yep, you're making a contribution. So in the past, all of that would have fallen behind. We wouldn't have known that. So we found that at least one or two, and one that I said was, the one that was quite extreme, we actually had one of our technical staff working with him. And the technical staff's comment was like, I don't know how this individual has even gotten through co-op. Like, he has to be told everything. And so when I asked what jobs he did, he was doing quality assurance stuff. He had a very set script that he had to do. Basically, press the button, record the numbers. Press the button, record the numbers. So that type of student, great. They can follow those instructions. But in terms of actually taking initiatives on a capstone project, we wouldn't have known necessarily that what was happening. So we have the students who are like Dave that could be technically strong, but they've got other things they want to do and they don't do. So that's what we were also calling the hackathon approach. So that's in this coordinate over here. So those are the ones that you've probably seen, the kids who can pull things off at the last minute and think that's going to be good enough, and then sometimes they get caught. The other one that's over in this far corner, I'm kind of jumping along a bit, but where we found that it's still a forced situation, but it's an odd one. And that is, and I had one of our very, very strong technical student come and talk to me after graduation. It was a female. Who was upset about what she felt was her limited contributions to her capstone. The capstone team had done fine, but she felt that because of the direction that the team had gone into, she actually couldn't contribute because it had kind of blocked out her skill sets. And so she was also in what we would call a force or group imposed social loafing condition. She felt awful about it. Her team did fine. I don't think you would even know, because the student is strong enough that you wouldn't necessarily see it, but in the student's mind, they felt they could have done so much better. So that's another thing that we're kind of tripping over through these accountability logs and then students' disclosure. And then the one that I said, does everybody know what Dunning-Kruger is? It's my new favorite term, beside entitlementality. So Dunning-Kruger, I've got to give you a little backstory, and this is also self-imposed social loafing. So you can have group imposed and you can have self-imposed. So Dunning-Kruger, David Dunning was the supervisor. Justin Kruger was the master's student. And this was back in, I think the paper is 1998. I might actually have it at the bottom of the one slide. They looked at whether or not people can do this kind of self-reflection and get a gauge as to where they are in a cohort or in terms of their performance. And they ran a number of studies. And what they found was that the weakest students often thought they were up in the 70th or 80th percentile because they knew so little about what they were doing that they didn't actually have a clue that they were incompetent. Right? So you need to have a certain level of competence to understand that you're incompetent in a discipline. That's really the Dunning-Kruger. And so it's kind of circulated around as a Dunning-Kruger effect. You can Google it, you can find it. But what we were finding is, we found this out at one of our students that was doing the 2-week recovery, is yes. So the student, we had thought the student had just been putting things off. But he had, because he thought that he could do it. But even when he had more resources and time to actually do the piece, he couldn't. But at the panel exam, it became clear to us, he didn't realize that he was telling us answers that were completely wrong. So these are really dangerous. I would love to figure out if we can use these accountability logs or other kinds of things to try and figure out where are our Dunning-Krugers, and can we find them earlier in the process, like not waiting until they're in 4th year to find this, because now they're really dangerous. Right? This is a student that if not caught, well, they are. Right? I've actually said to first-year students, I tell my first-year students this in my 162 class, and I've had to say to a couple of my first years, you're going to be a dangerous engineer, right? Like, because you're not doing any monitoring or filtering, like nothing. Somebody's got to tell them. Anyways, so we're coming up with this model. This was kind of that came about as I was writing the paper. And this is what I'd like to actually start exploring more with our students. So, probably talk to you and some others about this. But have you seen social loafing in various machinations amongst your teams? Or do you have other ways of spotting social loafing? Yeah, Mike?
We've done peer review, and we found the peer reviews to be effective. Dr. Anderson is not here, is doing peer reviews this term, where they're actually doing written peer reviews. And he says that some of the peer reviews are even more critical than faculty reviews.
Okay. That's interesting, because we've heard from our students kind of the reverse. They don't want to be the ones to fail a teammate. So which is why they like the accountability logs, because it's the student's own evidence and words that's failing them. But it'd be interesting
But
to know
we're
what
talking
you're
peer
doing.
reviews between groups too. So the interim report from one group is assigned to 2 other groups.
Oh, that kind of peer assessment.
Yeah.
So not within the team itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So primarily, to become aware of a problem, it's usually somebody in the group has to tell me that, by the way, so-and-so is not
Yeah.
contributing in a way that he or she should be. And I think that is very difficult for students because, they feel like, they're running to tell on somebody like it's elementary school. And so unless I think there is a formal process where everybody has to submit, here's my
Yeah.
review of what other people in the group did, regardless of whether it's good or bad, you won't get a whole lot of data out of students because nobody wants to be,
Well, and
turn
that comes
someone
back
in.
to our myth, right, where we said the faculty members suspected that there was something, but the team didn't come and tell them until it's too late. Yeah.
I've also found, I had an extreme case of this last year, but the group was being fed excuses by this person, and because of these excuses felt bad saying anything formal.
Yeah.
So they admitted to me that the student did nothing. I had more history on things and knew this student did nothing. But they did not put anything in writing in their report
Yeah.
because that was seen by everybody.
Yes.
And so they couldn't, when it wasn't anonymous to the person, they wouldn't report it. And without all the history, they said nothing, and then the coordinator's hands are tied.
Yeah. and this is where, do you want to jump in?
And so last year I actually ran a CATME survey. I don't know if you guys have ever used CATME, but it's like a team assessment thing and it's anonymous. And so a lot of these issues were able to then pop out and you can see those 4 categories of people. So I had people say, I hate my project topic. It's a cool team, everyone's nice, they're all my friends, but I just have nothing to connect with. And so there's a social loafing thing. Or the teammates that got consistently rated down by others saying they didn't make contributions or things like that. So I definitely think there is room for that peer assessment to be part of that.
And again, if it's being done anonymously, it's very different than a written report where they're all reading it and submitting it at the same time.
And it's anonymous to students, but it's not anonymous to me, so I know who wrote the comments.
So their technical logs are not read by their other group members, and they're confidential.
Yeah, and so that's why we said it's actually the students' own words, it's their evidence. And so we could take you aside, if you and Matt were on the same team, I could take you aside separately to just do a little more probing to find out whether you're not contributing because you feel you're being blocked by your teammates. You're not contributing because you don't have any skills in that area. You're not contributing because you've been spending your time looking for a job. You know, we've got ways of kind of isolating it out in a way that, but it needs to be a more comprehensive piece. We're not saying this is the best approach. We're just saying it's a piece that we've been kind of working on.
So I have to do a personal reflection report at the end, but after seeing what I have right now, I don't think we certainly don't have the resources to do the log. But I think that what I'll do is I'm just going to move the personal reflection report forward to midterm. And then if they do the personal reflection report forward to midterm, you know, then the supervisor can see what's happening a little bit more, and the person is forced to write down what they're doing, and maybe they've got 6 weeks to sort of pick up the ball.
And that might be a solution, because we've been doing postmortems as well. You do one at the end, right? And they are helpful.
Yeah, at the midterm. Whenever they hand in the ALs, the accountability logs, I have them do a reflection on this as well.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but one of the things you've been doing is putting more emphasis on grading the postmortem. And then the accountability logs are the evidence, right? So they're there, they still have to do it. And minimum what they'd have to do is, you know, in any term is 12 weeks worth of a paragraph each. So not a lot of work to be the minimum, but it's their words. So you can go then from that reflective piece down to, okay, where's your evidence for this? And you can talk separately to students if you need to. Yeah, I like that idea. Good. So our main takeaways, because we're going to have to wrap up, is that what we found is that even failing students expect to be held accountable. So we were actually pleased to see that. That the ALs are a tangible piece of evidence in the students' own words. So it's something that we actually have. So when we ask for, you know, it could be a video clip, it could be their calculations, it could be their code. It's actually something tangible. It's not just, oh, I think I did something. The AMLs may be used to assess graduate lifelong learning indicators. So we're kind of working on that piece as we head towards CAB reviews. They'll be used, like we already said, the better students that are wanting to go on a design path are using them as part of their design portfolio. And the biggest thing is that social loafing is way more complicated than we thought it was. And that's what we're going to try and do a little more research on. I think on my next slide, so there's the reference to Dunning-Kruger. There's actually another one by Caputo and Dunning, which is even better, and it's on omissions and why is it that you don't know what you don't know, which is really cool. Anyways, there you go. So I think that's it. Yeah.
So I love the idea on the rubric of tying it to, this is the kind of work that will get a reference or not. I think that grabs people's attention. I have a question about the social loafing diagram that you had, and the forced one in particular. What about the forced ones that have nothing to do with either technical skill or academic knowledge or anything, but are simply due to like implicit bias or social location problems where somebody's being ostracized for various reasons, and the group themselves might not even know that they're doing it that way for class or race or gender or like...
Yeah, so I'm not sure where to put that in. It may be that this winds up with multiple categories, but the ostracization, what we're finding, at least on the design projects, usually have to do with some sort of mistrust. Right? So mistrust is in there. Whether they're mistrusting because you could be a good student, but they never had things in on time. Right? It could be, you know, never show up to meetings. But there's definitely a mistrust piece that's in that category. But it's the group dynamic that is actually playing off the mistrust. It's what we're figuring is happening. Yeah.
I have to go, so I just want to really quickly say, like, when I supervise quite a few Capstone projects, and I've actually caught this kind of behavior, but I also meet with the groups weekly, and I interview them every week. And I think, I mean, it does mean that the project supervisors have to be a little bit more proactive and responsible. But in the case that I've caught, it becomes very evident. And all I do is I ask them for an email trail, and then as soon as that's caught, then I basically can take action. And I mean, that's the other possibility, right? To take the load off of the person marking them to the project supervisor, who are sometimes I don't think are very responsible.
So and it's to also move it forward, right? If you can catch it earlier, you can do something about it. If it waits till the end, you can't.
So I mean, to make that work, you need to train the project supervisors. And a lot of project supervisors don't do the job well.
And we work on that. And we've been trying to hope that we can start to put together some tools that we can use. And just having the supervisor have to be at the panel exam is part of the process.
So just while we're at this slide, in the category there, mismatch between skill set and design solution, I've encountered similar things, and I tend to view that as actually kind of a problem with the group's approach to the situation. Because when you sit down for a design project, I ask the students, so like, what are your skills, and how do they map to what it is you're trying to do? And sometimes, the group of students will tell me, oh, they want to do this great hardware project, but none of them know anything about hardware. They haven't taken any such courses.
That was our failure group.
Yeah, and sort of a failure to account for what are the skill sets of everybody in the group, not just 3 out of the 4 people in the group I see as like a group problem and a design problem on their side.
Yes, we're seeing that too. I do want to wrap up because I'm appreciative of the fact that everybody probably has things that they need to do. But I'm happy to stay for a few minutes. I do have to go to a seminar in a bit, but I'm happy to stay for a few minutes for anybody that wants to stay. So, or you can always email me.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to Carolyn and to him for this talk. It was really good, and thank you.